Good afternoon. My name is Tim Chang. I'm a managing director with Mayfield Fund. We're an early stage venture capital firm based in Silicon Valley, focused on Series A and B companies. I happen to lead the mobile and consumer practice, and a big part of that is next-gen e-commerce, as well as Internet of Things, mobile devices, mobile applications, as well as what I like to think of as next-generation health and wellness, or even sort of self-improvement 2.0. And that's going to be an aspect I talk to you today about. Let me adjust this. Very good. All right, so I'm going to talk to you a bit about something that might be a little bit abstract at times, but I kind of think of it as how we're building humanity 2.0, or using all these sensors, apps, tracking devices, quantified self frameworks to make us more human or better humans. And with that, maybe this notion of what an augmented soul would look like. So I'm going to start with a story here. You've all heard of quantified self, and I'd say we've been in the quantified self 1.0 realm, which honestly, until now, has been a bunch of really geeky people trying to prove how geeky they can be to each other, right? This isn't necessarily affecting all of the mass consumers, couch potatoes watching Oprah, etc. If you were to say quantified self, they'd probably say, I don't quite get it. My own foray into this world was kind of through the back door. It was kind of unusual. I've never been interested in fitness or health or any of these things. I remember as a late 20-something, I was on a business trip, traveling through an airport, and I was just flipping through the pages of a magazine. I think it was GQ or something like that, and I noticed there were no Asian underwear models, especially for men. And I was like, what's up with that? And it kind of got me thinking, and I was like, well, if no one's doing it, how hard could it be? Why don't I give a crack at this? So that kind of got me into just sort of the notion of working out or fitness, and as I delved into, the realm of exercise, kind of researching more about that, finding that actually it was 80% about what you eat or don't eat, more so than how many curls you do or bench presses, etc. And that took me into the realm of body hacking. So, for the last several years, I've been playing with extreme nutrition and supplementing and all sorts of things, from smart drugs for the brain to, how you can hack your workouts and sleep, etc. And really, it's because I'm a lazy bastard. I want maximum results with minimal effort because I actually hate exercising. I hate fitness. I hate all of that. I don't want to. I want to see how much you can get with minimal effort if you adopt a very scientific, methodical, and almost engineer's mindset to your own biology. So, with that, I found sort of this tribe of quantified selfers. These were all technical people, engineers, wiring themselves out, measuring things, and just trying to collect a lot of the data and log their lives. That was interesting. That led me to invest in companies like Lumosity, the world's leading brain training company, and then to co-found a company called Basis, which was one of the first wearable companies starting back in 2008 before there was even a term called wearables. Back then, our big question on due diligence was, who wants to track themselves? Who's going to wear this stuff? Believe it or not, now it's so commonplace that you have, Fitbit or Basis for dogs, for babies, for anything out there, right? Where we've also seen things go with all these devices is this whole rise of Internet of Things, which, similar to Quantified Self 1.0, there's a lot of experiments and hacks. Basically, let's stick sensors on everything out there, connect it to the cloud, and see what the hell happens. So you think of it as a massive set of parallel experiments where every object in your life around you will eventually get cloud connected. Then we'll figure out what the use cases are, what new service models are, and potentially what new businesses could pop up. That's a fun one to think about. What if your fridge was cloud connected? What if your lock was connected, like an August smart lock? What if your thermostat? We saw that with Nest. But then there's fun ones to think about. What would Nest of toilets look like? What services could that create? What new business models? I think a lot about now the next phase of this, or as I like to call it, quantified life, not just quantified self. Take all of those measurement, device, tracking methodologies and apply them to quantified work. We're seeing startups now helping employees measure every aspect about themselves, their response rates, their times, the way they react, the way they do their work, because they want credit for how they work, not just the metric the boss or the company defines, but maybe metrics you define for yourself. There's lots of ways to be a good worker. And now, if employees adopt some of these tools, they can kind of get credit for the way they do their job in ways that wouldn't have been captured on those performance management reviews, right? We're seeing the quantified home now with smart home devices, Nest, August, smart things, etc. So, your home will also be a smart entity someday as well. And now we're also seeing quantified pets, quantified babies, sproutlings, is like a Fitbit for your baby. Whistle is a really clever Fitbit for your dog. And one thing I think that'll be really interesting, I'm a new parent, and what would quantified parent look like? Are there devices or services that could analyze and tell me how good a job I am of doing a parenting? Am I consistent in how I give feedback to my 2-year-old, right? I think we'll even see quantified love. eHarmony and others have started on that route, but there's a great Wired article about how you can even hack the type of profile you write, the pictures you show, what you indicate, way beyond I like sunsets and taking walks on beaches and puppies, to tailor your answers for higher response rates versus the kind of partner you want to attract, right? We've seen quantified sports, quantified learning, and I'm even seeing entrepreneurs looking at doing quantified creativity. Yes, I do think you can measure this. I think you can measure happiness. I think everything is actually quantifiable with these sorts of frameworks, and these all lead to new applications. But there's an interesting question. Why? Why measure all this stuff? What's the end goal? What's the purpose of this? Is it just sheer geekiness, or is there something deeper? I started thinking a lot about this, and when you kind of look back in history, actually, this is nothing new. We humans have always sought categories, frameworks, ways to measure ourselves. We're always looking for these kind of buckets of where to put things, how to measure things, and how to break down the world around us to better understand them. This is an image of the ancient Asian zodiac. And then on top of these frameworks, we've always sought experts to read those tea leaves for us. You might even argue the world's second oldest profession could be the seer, the fortune teller, the soothsayer, the oracle, right? Our fundamental human need is, please tell me more about myself. I'm trying to figure out the cardinal question of, who am I? Why am I here, right? This has also created this giant $10 billion self-help industry. Back when we all went to bookstores, do you remember how many of those shelves were comprised of self-help books, whether it was business or management or being a better parent or spouse or whatever it was? $10 billion spent there, and it was always in the form of books or seminars or DVDs, but not with a whole lot of quantifiable outcome. What did that result in for all those books that you'd buy? This has made me think a lot about where we're headed, and it ties back to when I was a graduate student in engineering control systems. The one thing we always learned about was feedback loops, and the cardinal rule of these feedback loops is you cannot control what you do not measure. There's such a thing called observability, and through that you would figure out where to instrument the sensors and what you'd want to measure, stick it through a feedback loop, and then you would have controllability with that based on the variables you measure. So step one, where we have been up till now, is read. Let's stick sensors on everything so we can measure everything. So we're in this read phase. Step two, now we have to try to figure out with all these streams of data, what does it mean? What are the insights out of these piles and piles of signals? Can we comprehend it? Where we head to next, that's where things get fun. That's when we can not just have sensors that read, but maybe actuators that provide feedback and start to shape, control, or write back to the system that you're measuring. And then the holy grail of all of this is if you can write or provide feedback, you can control and then optimize or augment it, make it better, make it ideal, get what you want. This framework is actually pretty old. One of the earliest people to try to apply this to work is this person, Frederick Winslow Taylor, back in the 1800s, came up with the notion of taking a stopwatch and measuring the motions of every worker in a factory and trying to figure out the most efficient way to do something. This led to the birth of time and motion studies, which later on became the basis of things like Kanban and Kaizen and Japanese manufacturing processes. Interestingly, though, Taylor thought there was only one best way to do every job. And so the purpose of measuring everything was to standardize it into one uniform way that every worker should do it. My thesis is actually the direct opposite. I think by measuring everything, what you allow is the credit for every person to express the way they want to do it or how they do it best. That means there's many possible ways to do something better, but now you'll have the ways to measure it, capture it, and share that story. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So I think the really interesting business that pops out of this is, I guess I think of it as self-development 2.0. And it's not just purely technology fed. And it's not just human sharing economy style business as well. It's a combination of man and machine. It's sensors plus social interactions like cohorts, mentors, coaches, teachers. Similarly, it derives on artificial intelligence, but also human wisdom. The combination of those two are what I think the real hybrid business model of the future for all this stuff is headed towards. One way I think about it, in the 80s, this was the rise of physical fitness, right? This was sort of the body, the focus on improving the body. In the 2000s, we've seen the rise of mental fitness, and then I think what we're headed towards next is sort of emotional or even spiritual fitness, an understanding of who you are, what makes you happy, what is your purpose, your mission, your story of why you're here. And I'd like to think actually technology can help with this. Bit of a bold hope because a lot of us now, when we're walking down the street, you're looking at your phone, you're at a concert, you're watching it through your phone. People are really bemoaning the death of human contact and that we're all distracted by technology. Technology is making us less human. My hope is that actually I think this technology will make us more human, and what human is, that definition actually expands. So the key trends are that technology adds a feedback loop, a gratification layer, a real-time scoring mechanism to things that might have been considered old wisdoms or practices. Case in point, meditation. You could practice meditation for years and not know, are you doing it right? But I would argue that with the right heart rate sensors, breath analyses, types of feedback systems, you might be able to accelerate your journey to become a master meditation practitioner from years and years, maybe down to even months, right, with that real-time feedback. It's the same thing with fitness. You go to the gym for weeks and weeks and weeks before you can see anything in the mirror, but there are all these other changes going on in real time that sensors might be able to pick up that your eyes cannot. I think with that, technology could actually open the door to a broader acceptance of these types of practices like mindfulness, positive psychology, even so-called happiness training. That sort of bridges this gap between, say, Eastern wisdom, Eastern practices versus Western medicine. And then what that brings is quantified self going way beyond just your steps and activity of your physical body. It'll apply to not just the calories in of what you eat, but then how do you sleep? What's your stress level? What are your emotions like? How is your attention? What is the state of your relationships with people? And you'll see this then applied everywhere. Like we talked about, quantified life is quantified work, quantified play, creativity, all aspects. Then body hacking moves beyond just the physical body to brain, memory, emotion, even biology hacking. And we're already at that point today. So that's where a lot of the coolest innovations are just on the precipice of coming. The business models I think a lot about are where wearables and all this IoT stuff goes. Today, we've been trying to sell a lot of gadgets, Fitbits and Jawbones and Basis and whatnot. That's actually a pretty crappy business because you are stuck on a hardware cycle. You are aiming at every holiday season, trying to get a new product out, hoping people will buy it and still use it. But the truth is, most of these devices, if they don't become a daily habit for you, after 3 weeks, they just gather dust in your closet. That's why I think the real future business model of these is device as a service. Get out of selling gadgets and move towards a recurring service that is so compelling that you could sell that first and bundle the device in or give it away instead of trying to go the other way around. The services, these would be everything from management of your life, concierge, coaching, teaching, mentoring, all those sorts of things. And those, I think, will be hybrid services powered by human experts, human cohorts and peers, as well as artificial intelligence, big data type systems. And so, again, then wearable devices, I think we're going to see a whole new generation will have ingestibles, edibles, drinkables, implantables, all sorts of other things. And they'll go from not just reading, but writing and being able to provide feedback. One example, we've seen brainwave reading devices like Interaxon and others that can read your brainwaves and start to get you coaching services on how to better practice breathing for, say, focus, relaxation, or meditation. There's a new generation of neurostim devices now that provide ultrasound and electrical currents back to try to optimize the hardening of those neural pathways while you're practicing or learning a new skill. That's an example of not just read, but write back. Then I think the power of the cloud connected to all these devices creates a whole new set of prosthetics, not just physical prosthetics to replace a lost limb, but even a mental or brain prosthetic. We already outsource our image memory to Instagram or Dropbox. You'll start to outsource more and more of your brain processing into the cloud. Something I've been thinking about is machine-enabled creativity. I'm a musician, and what if I were to write an algorithm that analyzed every piece of music I've ever written? It could probably detect with enough data points my particular phrases or the way I like to express things, my sort of lingo with it, if you will. Then I could simply say, you know what, auto-generate using my biases every possible piece of music I would write. And then I'd look at the most interesting cases, claim authorship, and just tweak on those. Would that be something I wrote or co-assisted in writing? That would actually be something like machine-assisted creativity. As you connect all these things together, the power of the crowd creates really this sort of hive mind, networked human consciousness type aspect, where all our stories, all our lives, our signals are created together, correlated. You can see similarities, differences, all sorts of interesting paths there. This leads to this whole crazy brave new world kind of picture. And some of the things that keep me up at night that I worry about is that this will pretty much drive the rise of a superhuman or transhuman type of class. The thing is, though, this might create a new divide, not just digital divide, but a cybernetic divide, because access to all these technologies are never uniformly distributed. You'll have those that can afford them or have early access adopters, and then you'll have people sort of left out from this. As we get more and more connected, privacy becomes a big issue, and something I kind of suspect is that inevitably, privacy may be an illusion, that we're headed for the death of privacy. A lot of people would say, that's horrible, but then sometimes I kind of sit back and wonder, could privacy all be an illusion and the death of privacy actually lead to the truest freedom of all, pure empathy between all people? Someone's always once said to me, you only need privacy when you have stuff to hide. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about if we are all connected and learning from each other. And I think with that, what this brings us to is if we're in the attention economy now, the purpose of all of this tracking is to help us understand ourselves. Back to the fortune teller, we're all struggling with the question of why am I here? What is my story here? What is my identity and my mission? And with that, all of these data sets help us capture, encompass, analyze, and better author our own stories. That is invaluable. Think about how much people would pay tarot readers in the past, or fortune tellers, or oracles. When you're paying to better understand yourself, there's often no better business model. People don't care about data. They care about insights as applied to themselves and implications for who they are, who they could be, who they're not. So I'm going to end with a quick story here, but I remember growing up, there was once this parable of if you had 1 million monkeys at 1 million typewriters typing for 1 million years, they would create all the works of Shakespeare. Well, that, and they would create every possible story out there. So really, the mission of that, the mission of all of us, I kind of think the purpose of all life, the universe, everything, we are a huge parallel set of experiments running every possible scenario. And in the past, before we could track and measure things, each of our lives would be a page on these monkey typewriters that, when done, would be summarized in a 2-sentence obituary. You were born here, died here, had 2 kids, did this, and that was over. And that would be the sum of your life story. But as our lives are fully recorded, those streams, those story sets get richer and richer. It's like going from 1D to 2D to 3D, and that those stories get cross-connected, and that all of those then build out all the possible scenarios. And this is how I think technology actually makes us closer, builds greater empathy for understanding our different stories, and helps us understand ourselves. Because at the end of it all, it's all about self-awareness. And if these technologies drive that, that's a good thing to me. Thank you very much.